It's really hard to overstate the importance of Oregon and Penn State's game on September 27th, and we're hoping that gets the recognition it deserves on a Locked On College crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for a crossover edition of Locked On Ducks. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, and Locked On Nittany Lions, that is Zach Seyko. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks and the Nittany Lions. We are getting to a lot of things. I have a scheduling question for Seyko that might work in Oregon's favor this year. We'll talk about the AP poll and how that factors into the big game on September 27th. And the show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. So, this game, Seyko, I don't think Oregon fans are just overlooking the first four games they have to play. Penn State fans might, and we'll get into that more later. But the stakes in this game, I really can't get much bigger for a conference game in September. Because the way that I view this game for Oregon, Penn State is favored. That betting line has moved, by the way, to Penn State minus 6.5.
Oh, is that right, Spencer?
This is a
Who
lot.
said that?
That's
Who said that was going to happen?
We were debating whether that was where it opened. That's what I remember. That's all I choose to remember. But the Penn State is favored, and they absolutely should be. But for the Nittany Lions, this is the first real test they're going to have, and it's back to, can James Franklin win a matchup game, as Joel Klatt calls it? Can he beat a top 10 team with which both of these teams are, presuming they're undefeated going into the game, which they should be? On the other side for Oregon, this would flip my mentality for the 2025 season if they go on the road and win this game, because I view Oregon as a playoff team. They should be, but if they win this game, bona fide national title contender, right back to the expectations and hopes that Oregon fans had last year. So when you build up this game in your head, any of you listening or watching the show right now, I don't think you can go too high.
It flips the table for both programs. A win. This sets up momentum for the remainder of the season. This is the iconic game for Oregon, respectively, because it goes from, this is a team that, hey, maybe if they catch some momentum, they could possibly contend for a national title. They're on the outside looking in. This puts them directly right into the mix. And then it continues the narrative for Penn State if they were to lose that game. James Franklin can't win the big game. It is truly just a habit. It is truly, James Franklin-led teams are just notorious for being 10-2. They can't defeat opponents. They can't punch above their weight class. That's the issue with Penn State. It's not that they can't win games. Like, they win all the games that they're expected to, but they don't punch above their weight class. And if Penn State doesn't defeat Oregon, right, the spread's moving, most people would say that, hey, whether or not this game is close or it's a decisive victory, Penn State's probably going to win under the circumstances. So if the Nittany Lions don't actually do it, then it's only going to raise more doubt, more questions. It's going to lower expectations. It's going to deflate morale. And then are you going to be able to rebound against Ohio State? Because you have a lot of other games that, Penn State should beat them. They're better. This is beneath them. But then you get to Ohio State and it's, okay, you almost have to win the Oregon game. I mean, aside from, stay undefeated and achieve all the great things, right? But it's the domino effect and the momentum that it will create by doing so, because you just get the chip off your shoulder if you're Penn State.
Yeah, I think the advantage for Oregon fans compared to Penn State going into this game, there's way more downside for Penn State. Way more down. Whereas for Oregon, the upside is huge. If Dante Moore is playing well enough to go on the road and win this game, and a lot of the young pieces who are seeing big roles on the Ducks for the first time, particularly in the secondary, if they're able to step up and do enough to win this game, you take off. But a loss, Every loss is disappointing. I'm not trying to say that Oregon fans should just be like, who cares if Oregon loses? Like, no, you want to win.
Oregon can accept this loss.
Yes.
I don't know that Penn State could.
Yes.
I don't think Penn State can accept a loss to Oregon with the whiteout game, having a bye week, the cupcake schedule, everything lining up. I get it. Okay, maybe they're not battle tested, but you have everything lining up in your favor as Penn State going up against the big game and the big team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, Oregon having a bye week after this game can kind of help. So on the one hand, a tough loss, a nail biter, could sit with you for an extra week. Wouldn't love that. On the other hand, if you go and, play a physical, drawn-out game, you just wind up losing, you get a chance to reset and come back home and play a good Indiana team. Something else that I want to get to, Seyko, that I really hope does resonate with the college football community enough, we'll see, because this is ultimately up to television executives, is whether or not this will be the college game day game. It is easily, right now on paper, one of the two best games of the week. The problem that they could run into is the other game is Alabama at Georgia.
What is game day? ESPN.
Right. It is.
So expect big noon kickoff potentially at that game.
Yeah, but it's not the same. Big noon's fine. Big noon's fine. It's not game day.
I do think it's interesting to see who's going to ultimately win the ratings battle. I probably expect ESPN College Game Day, but if I was going to make a prediction, Fox Big Noon Kickoff is going to be at Penn State, Oregon, and we're seeing a conference realignment. We're seeing programming realignment where ESPN is always going to favor SEC because it helps the ratings. They own the rights to the SEC, so they're going to promote the SEC. Same thing with Fox, CBS, NBC. This is just logistics. I get it. It's boring. It's not fun. But you're not going to see ESPN, well, objectively, this might be the more high-profile game.
Well, they went to Oregon last year for the Ohio State game.
But I think we're going to see more. Yes. I mean, again, I'm not saying that ESPN can't be objective in choosing its game, but when it comes down to it, do you think the executives are going to go around the table and say, hey, we should really pass up on Georgia, Alabama here because Penn State and Oregon over there, again, the rights management, all of that stuff, it matters.
It does, and I think that's too bad because Georgia, Alabama's awesome. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I won't be dialed into that game as a college football fan. Of course I will. It's going to be fantastic. I just think the stakes are higher in this Penn State-Oregon game, mostly from the Penn State angle of, is this the breakthrough moment for James Franklin? And we'll see it discussed on those shows regardless. It's just, I think the environment in game day, it's a lot more established. It's the traditional highlight opportunity show that you want to be a part of. Not that getting Big Noon isn't, a worthwhile endeavor, but, would it be the game day game? I hope so.
You're so dismissive of that. I can't believe what you're
I don't watch Big Noon.
Big Noon's not bad, but
it's not the same. It's not the same because it doesn't have the history. Like, I think the guys that do Big Noon do a good job, and I think they've got a solid panel. And it will feel a little different, because Lee Corso has picked Oregon for the final time in his illustrious career because he's retiring after the Texas-Ohio State game.
Yeah.
But still, the game day environment and atmosphere is, to me, unmatched. They've always nailed this show, for all the programming, I'll say questionable decisions ESPN's made over the years. Game day has never been one that you've looked at and go, oh man, they've screwed it up. No, not really. I'm not a huge McAfee guy. He has his moments, but I think a lot of people obviously engage with that angle of it. But we're gonna get back to talking about the actual football here, and some people would say that matters more. Some it's a hotly debated
That's why
topic.
They watch
but
us.
Yeah, scheduling favors Penn State in this game in a big way, except for the one way. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. And this game that we're talking about on the show today, Oregon against Penn State, is available right now. If you think 6.5 is too much respect for the Nittany Lions, you can go bet Oregon plus 6.5. If you think Penn State's rolling past the Ducks like a 40-27, then you go bet Penn State minus 6.5. All that and more for college football is available at FanDuel right now. Visit the FanDuel app and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. Don't miss it. Make sure you check it out on August 26th. FanDuel, play your game. Maybe there's just one edge for Oregon in the scheduling realm, and it's not unreasonable to think about. So I've gotten this question, Seyko, and wanted to bounce it off of you because more than a handful of Oregon fans have noticed, hey, Penn State doesn't play anybody in the first 3 weeks of the season. They've got the Indiana approach to non-conference scheduling. Then they have a bye. Oregon's going to be the first team that they'll see that could really punch them in the mouth, that could match them physically, aside from the inter-practice scrimmages that they have. So Does that concern you at all that Oregon by far will be the best team Penn State will have seen? And I don't think there's even going to be much of a challenge. I mean, what are they favored by against Nevada? Is it 45.5?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Anyway, does that concern you at all?
It has my attention. It goes back to the traditional rest versus rust debate that NFL teams, the team with the bye going into the next round of the playoffs, do they really even have an advantage? Most teams are going to say that they would rather be rested than beaten, battered, bruised going into a high profile football game. Let's just get you'll get the crazy, like for the pro football, Dan Campbell would probably, we'll play 1,000 games if it means getting to the next round, whatever. We'll play every team twice on our schedule, right? That kind of mentality. Okay, but strategically speaking, most coaches, if not all of them except for one across all sports, would say, yeah, we prefer the bye week and a gradual ramp up to that point in time. But I don't know the data on it, truly, which one actually helps you, the rest versus rust. But truly, Penn State is coming in completely rested. You are not going to be tested by any of those first three teams, including an FCS team. Oregon will absolutely be battle tested, but they also might be worn down to that point. Oklahoma State, Northwestern's at least going to give you a scrappy game. Oregon's going to win that game handedly. Northwestern's going to at least be physical.
Real quick on that front, I legitimately, I say this as someone who has a national college football show, I don't really know what to expect from Northwestern. They went way up in David Braun's first year. They went way back down next year. You're going to be playing at a stadium that is not a regular college football stadium because theirs is under construction right now.
It's noon.
At noon, yeah. It's a 9 a.m. Pacific time kickoff. I tell you what, as someone who has other work to do every Saturday in the fall pretty much, I'm kind of here for the 9 a.m. Pacific time kickoff, 10 a.m. Mountain time for me. And because I won't have any conflicts with the Oregon with the Oregon game and whatever Southern Utah game I'm calling that day. But I was curious. I thought you were going to say Oklahoma State and Oregon State, because I think that most Duck fans feel more threatened by those programs than Northwestern. But Northwestern is on the road. The other two are at home. Like, the Ducks should be.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help.
No, it certainly doesn't. But it was just funny that you brought that up, because I really don't know what to expect. They have Preston Stone at quarterback, by the way, who is perfectly serviceable. He started at SMU.
I like him.
Yeah,
within reason.
Yeah, he started at SMU a couple of years ago, and then he lost the job throughout the early portion of last season to Kevin Jennings. But he was going to be SMU's starter last year. But they decided Kevin Jennings is better, but Preston Stone isn't bad. Now, what's the rest of the roster like? I don't really know. But at the very least, Northwestern would be the toughest game that Penn State will play in their first month of the season.
Oh, yeah, it would be, absolutely, because it's in conference. And again, Northwestern is always going to, their ceiling's not very high, but you know what you're getting in terms of physicality. They're going to go a full 4 quarters. You might be winning by 28. That doesn't mean anything. Northwestern, and this is aside from, hey, the change from Pat Fitzgerald to David Braun. At some point, most programs just are what they are in terms of the foundation, the fundamentals, right? Wisconsin's going back to power run football after trying the spread and some air raid a little bit under Luke Fickell. But do you see there's always that return to your tradition? So Northwestern's going to give you it. It's not ideal for the Oregon State game, but it stacks on top of it. Okay, you have a serious game with Oklahoma State. You have somewhat of a serious game with Northwestern. Then you have another serious game with Oregon State. No bye week in between, and you're at home, then you travel, you're at home, then you travel. And it's cross country. Oregon traveling all the way these things matter, which is why you're seeing the spread start to catch up, because people are realizing, okay, Oregon's going to be doing a little bit of back and forth. They're playing some legit teams. Even though I expect them to win all of those games, it's going to build up on the wear and tear, which obviously plays in the favor of Penn State. Again, it's the rest versus rust debate. I actually, again, I'm going to side with coaches and say that I prefer Penn State's setup to Oregon's.
Yeah, I'm with you there for a 1 week bye. Oregon fans would probably tell you there's a line that you can cross where you do get rusty, and it's at least 3 weeks or just over 3 weeks, because they went from December 7th to January 1st without playing a football game. The first half of the Rose Bowl didn't exactly look very good in a number of ways. So I think that, the 1 week bye, typically great coaches in college football and pro football are really good off of buys, especially. Andy Reid off of buy is like the easiest.
That's a guarantee.
That's a lock just about every single time. But for this game, Seyko, I don't know if it'd be my number one key. Maybe I'll change my mind by the time the game actually rolls around, because in these big matchups, what I've seen with Oregon in these games is whoever wins the rushing battle tends to win the game. Though I don't know that was the case in the Big Ten title game.
Penn State had a better day running the football, but Penn State couldn't stop Tez Johnson.
Yeah, that's right. And so typically it's who wins the rushing battle, but
typically.
What I look at in this game, with all the travel factors, with Penn State being off a bye, and the whiteout environment, of course, is going to be just a spectacular scene of college football. Oregon's got to, and the fact that Penn State hasn't been tested, Oregon's got to throw the first punch. They've got to come out and take the air out of that crowd and wait for it to inevitably build back up whenever Penn State scores. But first thing, I've compared it to the 2023 Utah game. They went to Rice-Eccles. It was game day. They went into a hostile environment, and we learned in Ducks versus them afterwards, Lanning wanted the ball first because they wanted to go down the field. They got the ball first because Utah won the toss, deferred, and then Oregon went down the field, scored a touchdown, and then they blew them out from there. I don't think they'd blow them out. I'm just saying that you don't want that crowd to really start to get into it when, Dante Moore is making his second road start as a Ducks quarterback.
And I'll also point this out to add to it. Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki get 2 weeks to prepare for Oregon. So whether or not you're on the side, whatever side you're on of, I'll take the rested team, or I'll go against the team that's going to be rusty. Jim Knowles, who cracked the code of Oregon in the most consequential game of the Ducks season, is now over at Penn State and gets 2 weeks to prepare for an Oregon team that still needs to build chemistry. I would say Penn State would be a little more conscious of the rust factor if the core wasn't back together. Drew Aller's been through this. Singleton, Allen, the defense. Okay, I'd be a little more concerned about Oregon going into a rusty situation. They need these games to build the reps, to build the chemistry. Honestly, that's better for them in the long haul. But Penn State getting that second week, that extra week to focus on the big game is going to pay dividends.
We still have more to discuss for one of the games of the year in college football. Are these teams ranked appropriately going into the game? Does that help them get game day? That and more coming up on today's show. First, this episode brought to you by Wayfair. As summer winds down, there's something nice about getting back into a routine you love, and Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up for the season ahead. From bedding and linens to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. So I just moved to a new apartment, and I've got a ton of furniture things to figure out, and Wayfair's got a bunch of options to help me decide which is going to fit where and how it's all going to look and what exactly I should be looking for, because Wayfair's got a bunch of options out there. They have got couches, they have got other furniture, everything you could need, Wayfair's got it. So get organized, refreshed, and back to routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. So preseason AP poll is out, and people can dismiss these polls all they want, Seyko. Preseason perception of teams matters a whole heck of a lot. If Oregon came into this season as the number 22 team in the country and went 10-2 with their schedule, with losses to Penn State and Washington, and no one else were like Iowa doesn't end the season ranked, neither does USC. Maybe Indiana's good. I don't know if they get into the playoff. I think they do. But it's definitely a lot tougher than when you come in with the expectations that both of these teams have in the eyes of the national media landscape, because when you're a preseason top 10 team, you get a lot more leeway. And, the good news for Oregon on the rankings front here and being a potential at-large team in the playoff, and this applies to Penn State as well, but more for Oregon because they're on the road, a loss is not going to cause them to plummet in the rankings. Like
three spots, maybe.
I don't even know if it'd be that much. Go to the preseason number 2 team in the country who will definitely be undefeated in their stadium. I don't know that, an Oregon loss would do that much to their rank. Maybe a spot, maybe, depending on what happens elsewhere in college football. I mean, Bama's preseason number 8. If they go to Georgia and lose, it's the same thing. Like, I don't think that's going to do a whole heck of a lot. Conversely, though, if Oregon wins this game, I don't think it's unreasonable to think the Ducks could be the number 1 team in the country all of a sudden, again.
I mean, yeah, it definitely depends. It's really all indicative of what does Texas do, what does Ohio State do, Clemson, anybody else. I do think it's interesting that Oregon, I think it's because of, but Notre Dame's going through a quarterback change. Georgia is technically going through a quarterback change. I see this game as a top 5 matchup, because I am assuming that Oregon does not get tripped up. I think they are good enough to beat Oklahoma State, even though Oklahoma State fans are starting to say, I'm starting to see some momentum there that, hey, we believe that we can beat the Ducks. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm skeptical.
Or Oregon will win all of its games, whether they're close or by a lot. They're going to be undefeated. That's going to be, I think, a top 5 matchup. At least it should be. But if everybody else wins and handles business, how much do these rankings change? As we can see, if you're listening, it's different. If you can see them up on the screen here on video. But if everybody else continues to win out, maybe Notre Dame loses to Miami, but then does Miami vault up? Conservatively, this is a top 10 game. But rankings do matter. Your point about, how much stock you should, or questioning when people say, how much stock should you put into the rankings themselves? You should absolutely put stock into these rankings, because you're going to go back, and teams may change over the course of the season, Spencer. But when you look back in the resumes of everything, you did beat a team that was ranked wherever they were at that given time. That matters. So teams are different versions of them. Just because, let's say, a team falls off, like a USC, for example. Everyone says that, USC was not that good of a team. They were mediocre. Penn State ended their season. That was a completely different USC team when Penn State played them versus the team that they were at the end of the season. So it's not a one-size-fits-all type of assessment there at the end of the day. So if you are ranked where you are and you pick up one of those monumental victories early in the season, huge for your resume. Huge.
Yesterday on my show, Seyko, I dubbed myself Captain Optimism, because that is, of course, an appropriate nickname for me all the time. And I want to flip the script. This popped into my head as I was looking at the top 10 rankings. And let's play a little worst case scenario here. So I'm going to throw this back up on YouTube. Top 10 teams, for those listening on audio, are Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, and Miami. 29 of the last 31 years, I believe, or something in that sort of realm. A top 10 team, preseason in the AP poll, has finished unranked at the end of the year. That doesn't mean they do a Florida State. Someone asked me the other day on my college football Twitter account, hey, who's this year's Florida State? And I'm like, okay, I get what you're asking. There is no, Florida State is literally, I'm not being hyperbolic, they are literally the worst preseason top 10 team in the history of college football. Nobody has been there are numbers to back it up, nobody has been as bad of a preseason team in the top 10 as Florida State was last year.
Michigan in the late 2000s? I think they deserve consideration.
Like when they lost to Appalachian State?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be up there, but I don't think they finished 2-10.
No, that's technically
Florida State went 2-10, and one of their wins was against Charleston Southern. The other one was against Cal and Pac-12 legend Justin.
Of an ACC schedule, man.
Yeah, I mean they got housed by Memphis on their home field. Now Memphis is admittedly a Power 4 caliber program. They're good, but let's just play out, for the sake of entertainment, a little worst case scenario. If Penn State, and then I'll go for Oregon, were to finish the year unranked, which probably is 8-4, 7-5 is
7-5.
unranked.
I think 8-4 actually sneaks them into the top 25 still.
I don't think so. But let's say it's one of those records. If that were to happen, what has transpired for Penn State?
Injuries, because objectively speaking, I don't understand how the nucleus of a third-year starting quarterback, 2 superstar college running backs, one of the best offensive lines in college football, the best offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator tandem in all of college football. I don't understand how that would equate to an 8-4 record unless you have some substantial injuries. The only thing that derails this Penn State team, could they drop a game that they shouldn't? Meaning Oregon, that's a game that they shouldn't drop, but they could lose it. So could they go 10-2 because of circumstantial? Hey, you just didn't have your best game plan. Oregon executed better. Ohio State executed better. Could Penn State absolutely could go 10-2 in theory. But to say worst case scenario, 7-5, 8-4, they're getting upset. They're not favored in games that they should be favored. It's injuries. It's not going to be because of schematics or talent or X's and O's. James Franklin said it himself. This is the best team that he has coached at Penn State from a personnel standpoint. He's going on the record to say that this is his best coaching staff that he's ever assembled, along with the best roster. He said it, and I agree with him. I agree when you look at everything with what you have, and Jim Knowles was a big part of that puzzle. They upgraded defense when how much better could you get than a top 10 defense? I know people have their grievances with Tom Allen. Still a top 10 defense? How could you actually improve upon that? Oh, you go get the best defensive coordinator in college football away from the team that has been a thorn in your side for the better part of a decade. So if Penn State is going to fall apart, so to speak, and fall below expectations, like, again, outside of the top 25, it would be significant injuries, quarterback or player or positions where they're really a little thinner, defensive line, secondary, particularly at safety. That's what could derail this team, especially if those are long-term injuries. Week by week, different scenario. I think you can win games when you don't have your top talent. But if it's again, I don't want to name names, but if you lose a key player for the season, for a long, extended 6 to 8 weeks, and you go to Iowa, yeah, those games could be closer than expected.
Yeah, for Oregon, like the injuries can, of course, do this to anybody.
It's happening right now in real time.
Yeah, I mean, Trey McNutt broke his leg. I think he was a depth piece as a true freshman. I mean, he technically could have had the opportunity to start. Obviously, unfortunately, won't.
I'd say too deep.
Won't
He
now.
was a too deep player. That's important.
Yeah. I mean, it could have come up because then if you have another injury, I think he probably would have, his most likely spot would have been backing up Kingston Lopa at one of Oregon's safety spots. Like, well, if Kingston Lopa goes down with an injury, well, suddenly you're looking up going, wait, so the guy who I would have projected third on the safety depth chart is now our number one guy. Okay. So, like that's not a great piece of news. I think it's manageable, but certainly never what you'd like to see. Then the Jurion Dickey situation, I thought he would have a role. The receiver room is so ridiculously deep for Oregon, though. I'm not that concerned about what it means for on the field. I'm more concerned about what it means for Jurion Dickey off the field, and I hope he can rectify the situation and get back on track. But for Oregon, I think the explanation, the most likely outcome here, if I put on my doomsday cap, is actually a little bit simpler. It's Dante Moore isn't ready. There are calls for Austin Novosad to start by the midway point of the season, or to at least get a chance. Maybe they have to go back and forth a little bit and battle it out. And then Oregon just has bounce of ball 50-50 games go against them, and they hit their floor, which I think is 8-4. That's like just about everything going wrong, or that can go wrong, going wrong. But that'd be a loss probably, with 8-4. You're looking at a loss to Penn State, at Iowa, at Washington, and one of USC or Indiana. I don't think you lose 2 games at home in the same year. That's never happened in the Dan Lanning era. I don't think that begins, but I don't think one is totally and completely unreasonable there. So that's how I think it would be more likely to materialize for Oregon. I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not predicting that to happen, but nobody ever thinks they're going to be the preseason top 10 team. Florida State last year had plenty of people picking them, including Nick Saban, by the way, which is always the greatest example of how hard picking games in the pundit business is. I hear and I'm sure you do all the time, this guy doesn't know, he has no idea what he's talking. Look at this ridiculous prediction. The greatest coach in the history of the sport picked Florida State to win the ACC.
I think it's paralysis by analysis, to keep it short, because you hear so much feedback, and no coach is going to tell you all the bad. You'll hear some of the bad, but the players, the coaches, or the media members that you see, I think you just hear so much analysis that it's like, hey, I've heard enough good about Florida State. I like more Mike Norvell. Why not them? And then, it completely falls apart.
Yeah, and I mean, DJ Uyunglele did complete a 50-yard pass in a preseason game the other day, so clearly we're all just wrong. He never should.
Coaching matters.
It does, yeah. DJ never should have left Corvallis, man, for several reasons. He would have been better suited to stay there. But anyway, we will wrap it there for today. That's Zach Seyko, Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Ducks. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I know that we both did, or I know that I did. I won't speak for Seyko because he had to spend time with me. But hey, some people like that more than others. Appreciate everyone listening, and we will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.